So where do you want to be 10 years from now? This is a question that I really think a lot about, and I'll give you a little bit of where this came from. So I am a teacher. I started teaching kids who are visually impaired at a residential school for the blind. At this time, special education, we had invited students into the classroom, and we were only beginning to realize that in simply inviting someone in didn't really count. It's really about the outcome. So we had goals. I don't know that I'd ever even heard the word goals, probably much before I started teaching and in training. So goals were the thing. So I spent a lot of time thinking about goals and writing goals and figuring out how you would measure goals, and then how do you help kids actually accomplish the goals. A lot of time on goals. Then I figured out that, well, not only the kids, but then the adults, if we were focused on what we were going to do, then we had a better chance of helping that kid get to where they wanted to go. So there was the beginning of my journey of goals. They were legally required. There were certain ways you had to write them, and it really mattered a lot if the kids actually accomplished them. So I became known, and right now if you ask most people that have known me for very long, and you ask them, well, what does she talk about the most? It's goals. So that began my journey of goals. Then what happened in special education is then we started looking at really those kids' outcomes, and we started looking further down the road. We started doing more strategic planning and more asking like, well, what is the end game for kids? Oh, now I'm going beyond a year goal, and I'm now looking and saying, oh, well, what will it look like 10 years from them? When they exit school, really what is the outcome, where are we headed, and how do we get there? So that's how I started. And then I realized at a certain point, it's not just about kids who have IEPs, it's really about all of us. And that tension between what we're doing today and today's goal and where we want to be 10 years down the road creates the tension and the North Star of what are we doing today that's moving us either closer to or further from where we want to be in 10 years. So here's my question. If I were to ask you individually, could you give me a clear answer of what is the life that you want to be living, not just business? What's the life that you want to be living 10 years from today? Could you give me a good answer? Raise your hand. Could you give me a very clear answer? Well, okay, so this is really cool because I really thought the answer would be different in this group. Because most of the time when I ask that question, my answer that I get is, I don't really want to know. I don't really know. Or they tell me that, well, they could answer that professionally or in career, but not across all areas of their life. We're all going to be somewhere in 10 years. So why not be where we want to be? And before we can be there, we need to understand the results that we desire. So then I started really asking questions and prompting people, how do you think about a 10-year goal? How do you get to creating a 10-year goal? So this is a bit of some of the framework and pieces, and I have no idea if this is going to be 25 minutes. So just to let you know, you'll probably get out early. But the idea is what are the things and what are the ways to start thinking about what we want that result to be 10 years from now? What is the life that we want to be living? Have you noticed that young kids are really curious? You ever been in one of those things, especially parents with young kids? The why? You answer the question, why? Answer the question, why? Until you're really tired of the why. That's curiosity. Do you remember, or do you have kids that can take an entire afternoon with an empty cardboard box and be perfectly happy? Or open the cupboard and the refrigerator dishes that are plastic will entertain them for quite a while? It's imagination. By the time that we are 5, the number of times that we have been told no is amazing. Now, many of the times that no, they're necessary. The stove is hot, the dog may bite, all those things are necessary. And yet, that very beginning we have of imagination and curiosity recedes quickly. We become realistic. Keep your feet on the ground. Get your head out of the clouds. Be realistic. And over time, what happens is our curiosity and our imagination begin to diminish. Now, here's the deal. They're like muscles. The more we use them, the more they work, the better benefit we have. And yet we start moving away from them because we're going to be realistic. That's not realistic. So here's the deal. How curious do you feel you are? Raise your hand if you think you're a really curious person and you actively engage in that curiosity. All right, cool. So someone tell me, what do you do to help encourage and make sure you're curious and that you're engaging in that curiosity? Who can tell me something?
Allow time for it.
Allow time for it. Perfect. What else?
Say yes when I don't feel like it.
Say yes when I don't feel like it. Another one?
Ask a lot of questions.
Ask a lot of questions. All of those things are really important in terms of curiosity. Now, here's one I will tell you. If you are not super curious or you're looking to increase your curiosity, or someone else, you want to give them an idea, try something new. Anything new. Disrupt your routine. And I don't mean it has to be big. It could be a new recipe. It could be a new restaurant. It could be a different route to work or from work. It doesn't really matter. But we're looking to interrupt our own patterns to engage in the curiosity. So again, the more that we engage in our imagination and our curiosity, the more we will have imagination and curiosity. So one of the first two things is to be mindful of the time we spend and the thought we give to being curious and using our imagination. Then we start looking at, we're playing. So you have to think of it, we're playing in the sandbox, because there may be some things that we really want, and yet when we get it, we realize it's not as good as we thought. One of the things that when I'm talking to people, they say, well, I can't plan 10 years out. Things are going to change. Yes, they're going to change. But they're going to change even if you don't plan 10 years out. So you may as well do some thinking about 10 years out. Or someone will say, I don't know what I want. Nope, we don't till we try it. I wanted a hot tub. I really wanted a hot tub. I like hot tubs. I thought a hot tub would be great. I got a hot tub. Guess what? I like hot tubs. I don't like owning them. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of expense. I no longer have a hot tub. But here's the deal. Until I got the hot tub, I really didn't know if a hot tub was in my 10-year goal. So the other thing is we have to realize that we're playing. This is not like, oh my gosh, I have to figure this out, and once I figure it out, nothing is going to change. This is really about exploring the curiosity, the imagination, and we try some things, and we take things off the list and we put things on the list. But we're looking at that horizon, and where do we want to be headed? Where do we want to end up? And this 10-year goal, when you create it, acts a bit like a North Star. Because then when you have decisions to make, you're weighing it against, if I do this or I don't do that, does that take me closer to or further from where I want to be in 10 years? It's not an absolute. It's just a guide. Am I moving closer to or further from? Or have I learned something new that changes my 10-year goal? I'm asked all the time, how often do you revise your 10-year goal? When I feel like it. I look at it at least once a year to really look at it to see what has changed. But when something changes in our life, or we have something we see, your kids are going to exit high school. They're leaving. Ooh, empty nest. It's a transition point in life. Your goal may not be exactly 10 years. Go for at least 3, because we're looking for that long view. We want to balance what we're doing day to day against the longer view. So for you, your time frame may be, this is when I think I'm going to start having kids. This is when I think the kids are going to leave. This is when I'm planning to retire. This is when I'm going to move. Any of those things can be the point that makes sense for you to say, this is my long-term goal. I'm looking at this point. I frequently will ask people when they tell me, I don't know, I think what I'm doing now. And if they've got young kids, I go, all right, so 10 years from now, what if your kid is on a travel hockey league? What would need to change in your life to show up the way you want for your son or daughter in that hockey league? And they pause, and I can see the wheels. What would your life need to look like to be the person you want to be at that point in your life? That's the magic of the 10-year goal. Because now you're starting to think about who you want to be, what do you want to do, and what do you want to have. And when you start thinking along those lines, and you give it thought and you play in the sandbox of life. Experiment. Find things you think you want, and then you go, nope, hot tubs are not for me. The strongest point to be in is a place of contentment. Contentment means that we're happy with where we are, we feel good about it, and we see the future and more things to come, and more good things to come. Beware of complacency. Yeah, it's good enough. No, this is good enough. I don't have anything else. The whole thing is, where do you want your life to be? What do you want to be doing? What is the impact you want? And when we begin thinking about it from where we are today and we look into the future and we play and we experiment and we have fun and we share and we build and we change, the likelihood of us reaching that ideal life to be the person, do the things, and have the whatever we want, it's much greater. So it's really about curiosity, imagination, and playing. And those are things as adults we tend to do much less of than we did when we were younger. So my challenge is that you really pick that horizon for yourself and then start playing with, what do you want your life to look like? Try some things. Be comfortable that you may think it sounds great, and as you get closer, you're like, that's not so great. But continue to play, to explore, to move towards that ideal life that you want. And be sure and ask the other people around you, what do you want your life to look like in 10 years? You'll never regret the North Star you'll gain. That's it.